Welcome to Haunted Horizons. I will tell you haunted car ghost story. I had been looking for a car for weeks. My old one had given up on me, and with a limited budget, I decided to check out a small used car dealership on the outskirts of town. It was one of those places you wouldn't look twice at. A gravel lot filled with cars that had seen better days, and a crooked sign that read, "Honest Deals." Among the rows of dented and scratched vehicles, one car stood out. It was an old, sleek black sedan with a polished exterior that gleamed under the afternoon sun. It looked almost out of place there, like it had a story to tell. The dealer, a wiry man with a toothy grin, approached me as I was admiring it. "Ah, you've got good taste," he said, patting the car's hood. "This one's a classic. Runs smooth and it's a steal at this price." It was cheap, almost too cheap for how pristine it looked. Still, I was desperate and decided to take it for a test drive. The car ran beautifully. The engine purred like it was brand new, and the interior smelled faintly of leather, though it had clearly aged. I couldn't find a single reason not to buy it, so I did. For the first few weeks, I loved that car. It was reliable, comfortable, and surprisingly fast. Driving it felt like a dream, and I couldn't believe my luck. But then one evening, everything changed. It had been raining all day, a heavy, relentless downpour. I was driving home late from work, the wipers struggling to keep the windshield clear. As I turned onto the narrow, wooded road that led to my house, I felt a sudden chill. The heater was on, but the air inside the car grew cold, unnaturally cold. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then the radio turned on by itself. Static crackled through the speakers, loud and jarring. I reached to turn it off, but before I could, a voice broke through the static. "Help me," it whispered. Barely audible, but unmistakable. My heart pounded. I tried to convince myself it was some kind of interference, maybe a nearby CB radio. But then the headlights flickered, and the car began to slow down on its own, despite my foot pressing firmly on the gas pedal. "Come on, not now," I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. The car rolled to a stop on the deserted road, surrounded by towering trees. The rain hammered against the roof, and the only light came from the dim glow of the dashboard. That's when I saw it, a figure in the rearview mirror. It was faint, like a shadow, but it was there. A woman, her face pale and streaked with water, sat in the back seat, staring at me with hollow eyes. I whipped around, but the back seat was empty. My breathing was ragged as I turned back to the mirror. She was still there, her lips moving silently, as though trying to speak. My body froze, unable to move or look away. The car's engine roared to life suddenly, the headlights flaring brighter than before. The figure in the mirror vanished, and the car shot forward without me pressing the accelerator. I clung to the wheel, trying to regain control, but it was useless. The car seemed to have a mind of its own, speeding through the rain-slicked road with reckless abandon. It finally came to a screeching halt at the edge of a ravine. I sat there trembling, rain pounding on the windshield. The car was silent now, as though nothing had happened. But I knew better. The next morning, under the clear light of day, the car seemed normal again. No strange noises, no ghostly figures. I told myself it had been the rain, the stress, maybe even my imagination. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I started noticing patterns. The car behaved perfectly on dry days, but whenever it rained, things got strange. The radio would turn on by itself, playing old songs I didn't recognize. The heater would blow icy air no matter how high I turned it up. And sometimes I'd hear whispers, soft, mournful voices that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore it, but the experiences became harder to dismiss. One particularly stormy night, I was driving back from a friend's house when the car locked its doors on its own. The windows fogged up and I could barely see the road ahead. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into an anguished chorus. I screamed, begging whatever it was to stop, and suddenly the car skidded to a halt, narrowly avoiding an oncoming truck. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day I went back to the dealership, demanding answers. The dealer's grin faltered when I mentioned the strange occurrences. "That car," he began hesitantly, avoiding my gaze. "It's got history." "What kind of history?" I pressed. He sighed, glancing around as though afraid someone might overhear. "It used to belong to a woman. She died in it. Drove off a bridge during a storm years ago. They say her spirit never left." "Why the hell didn't you tell me that before I bought it?" I yelled. "Would you have bought it if I had?" he shot back. "Look, I'll take it off your hands, no charge." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't that simple. The car had chosen me, and somehow I felt responsible for whatever was happening. I decided to do some research, digging into old newspapers and town records. I found the story of the woman, a young widow named Eleanor. She had lost her husband in the war and had been driving home in a storm when she lost control of the car. Witnesses claimed they saw her struggling to escape the sinking vehicle, but no one could reach her in time. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to confront whatever was haunting the car. The next time it rained, I drove to the bridge where Eleanor had died. The whispers began almost immediately, growing louder as I approached the site. The figure appeared again in the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I know what happened to you," I said aloud, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry for what you went through, but you don't belong here anymore." For a moment, the air inside the car felt heavy, suffocating. Then, as if in response, the radio crackled to life, playing a soft, mournful tune. The figure in the mirror smiled faintly, and the coldness in the car lifted. I sat there drenched in sweat as the rain began to subside. From that day on, the car was different. The haunting presence was gone, and it became just a car again. But I couldn't bring myself to keep it. I sold it to a collector, ensuring they knew its history. As for me, I'll never forget Eleanor and the nights of terror she brought into my life. And I'll always think twice before buying another used car.